Hey everybody, welcome to a initial reaction video for Tunguska in N5. I've been playing Tunguska for the past season and a bit in Infinity N4 and I've really been loving them, so I thought we'd take the time today to see how they're shaking out in N5. Before we hit army though, first let's take a look at some context. So what defines Tunguska? Tunguska has quite a lot of high quality and best in class individual units. You have access to Interventors, which are some of the best hackers in the game. You have access to a Grenzer, where the multi-sniper is pretty comparable to a Pan-Oceanian bolt. And then other quite high-quality units like the Securitate, who have quite a high watermark for a line troop. You've got pretty outstanding gunfighting by Nomad standards. You've got a lot of marksmanship in the faction, as well as units with BS13 and mimetism -3, who can really tip the odds in your favor when it comes to shooting. You've got access to pretty unique kit and units. You have kit like jammers and fast pandas that don't necessarily show up in other factions, or even really in the other Nomad factions. Then on top of that, you've got very unique units like the puppet bots or the Zondnautica unit that have a role and a function that's pretty unique across Infinity. You are paying for your quality though, and for a long time Tunguska was hamstrung by the cost of its line troops and the cost of its general units. If you're not careful, you can spend most of your points pretty quickly. Additionally, your units are generally quite fragile, only being one wound and having low armor, or if they are multi-wound models, they have a clear vulnerability. This is like the Hollow Men, who despite being, pretty standard heavy infantry, are only dodging on a 10. Tunguska in N4 was roughly equivalent to Krigdor in power level for quite a long time. They came out of the link change pretty bad, where they didn't have any good pure cores or a way to have decent purity, and sort of floundered for a bit in the period between the link change and the Aftermath and Reinforcements updates. The Aftermath and Reinforcements units totally revolutionized the faction. Zellenkriegers brought both cheap orders and smoke, and the Reinforcements units brought in models like the Rounder and Kulak, who both filled fairly useful niches in Tunguska. Tunguska got access to smoke and cheap orders. They got access to a cheap unit to shoot through their white noise with an impactful gun in the Kulak, and the Rounder was quite a good midfield hunter who was great at winning fights against skirmishers or any other units with heavy mimetism. Now let's take a look at what N5 has to offer us. Alright everybody, so here we are in Infinity Army with the Tunguska Fireteams chart. So nothing much has really changed here. You've got unlimited duos, 1 Harris, 1 core. And first up you got the Securitate Fireteam. Nothing much has really happened here except that the Switcher and the Tag Treba have been added. We'll get to those when we get there. And then also the Grenzer has lost his wildcard status, so he's now available in the Securitate team as well. Going down a bit, the Spetscorp Fireteam has also added the Switcher to it. And then the Hollow Man Fireteam hasn't really changed either. You've got a new Fireteam in the Vatra Fireteam, where the Kriza Borak and Anaconda are the required units, and you can glue on a Kulak or a Grenzer. Bounty Hunter Fireteam hasn't changed much either, neither has the Naimic teams. And then your wildcard list hasn't changed that much from what I've observed, other than that Grenzer change. Usually in N4 you'd mostly be using the Securitate Fireteam. You'd occasionally use a Spetscorp Fireteam, occasionally a Hollow Man Fireteam, and then the Naimic Fireteam was sort of something you'd used to build off of with wildcards. I could still see that being of use, especially where they've kept that Naimic keyword. I think, the most exciting thing duo-wise will probably be in your Spetscorp Fireteams, where you can duo a Grenzer with Raoul Specter. I think that's going to be a pretty exciting duo, but otherwise I don't see much that's changed. So let's take a look at some of our units. Starting off with Securitate, nothing much has really changed here. You've lost the repeater combi rifle profile, which is one I don't think you ever really took anyway. You haven't really experienced a points drop like a lot of other units have, but Warhorse, which is the new veteran, has gotten a bit better in that it avoids BS attack -3. How often that actually comes up, though, I'm not sure. In N4, you could take a pure Securitate team kind of as a meme. You're probably not going to do that as much anymore, where the BS is capped at 13, which, you know, while being an acceptable BS, if you're putting up that Feuerbach at 22 points in a Swick, I'm not entirely convinced that's worth it. I think you are still going to be using the Securitate team as a basis for most of your fire teams. If we go back to the fire teams chart, you can see that's where most of your options lie. I used to have a pretty regular core of, say, a Securitate paramedic, 2 interventors, a rounder, and a Grenzer as a core. You can still put that together around a Securitate where the interventors are giving you that bonus. But, yeah, look, I don't think you're going to see Securitate in great numbers otherwise. The shotgun change hurts it slightly. I think otherwise Securitate haven't changed much. I think they're pretty good. I still think they're pretty good. The repeater profile is still great. I've had that be a huge issue for opponents. Also, the Warhorse Hacker, or they're going to need a Trinity to really get to you. And if you build your list right, your opponent isn't going to want to enter that network just to try and stage dive a single Securitate hacker. So look, I think Securitate haven't changed much, but they're still fine. Next, the Puppet Tactica Company. These guys have got a little bit of a points decrease, which is nice, but I think the big deal here is the Puppet Master Mine Layer that isn't costing you a Swick. I think that's quite nice. The hacker you'd sometimes take just as the cheapest hacker in faction, being 2 points cheaper than the Securitate hacker. And moving down to the Puppet Bots, you can see nothing else has really changed with them either. They've still got that Whip 14, which is fantastic. Still got the BS attack +1 burst on the first wound. And the Battle Ravage state's still a bit worse, but I think they're still going to be excellent. Really cheap on the puppets as well. I feel like they've gotten a bit of a points decrease, but I'd have to double check that. Puppets were excellent in N4. I think they're still going to be excellent in N5, even where you've had a change to the shotguns. Next is the Cheerkillers, which I think are in a pretty interesting spot. They really haven't had a points decrease, maybe 1 point, which I don't think is very much at all. I think the big change for them is going to be with the super jump changes, which is going to increase their speed quite a bit. In N5, the jump skill now just moves you 6 inches, no matter what your first movement is. So if you jump with the Cheerkillers, that's 12 inches of movement. I was really hoping the Shock Marksman Rifle would kind of go up to a multi-marksman rifle like the Orphan has in Bakunin, but I could see you taking a Cheerkiller and a Fiddler duo as quite a fast team that can go cap objectives where the burst bonus is pretty nice. The Cheerkillers are only MSV2 for smoke shooting. With BS12 shooting through smoke, it's passable, but I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be enough to get you across the line. I think with Cheerkillers, you're going to see the MSV2 Shock Marksman duoed with either Fiddler or maybe the Specialist Operative if you want to cheap out on it. Other than that, I don't know if they've been sort of revolutionized to make these worth it. I think the Light Shotgun Pulsar has gotten a bit of value due to the shotgun changes, and the cheapest Cheerkiller, now costing less than the cheapest Securitate. I could see that being relevant in a usage case. But, yeah, I'm not sure. I was sort of hoping for a little bit more with the Cheerkillers. But, they're not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I guess what else is holding them back is, they've got the Cheerkiller keyword in Fiddler, but you're not really seeing anything past that. The Switchers Grouper are a new model with the transmutation whip and dogged. The way I understand is that you do your first movement, you do the whip roll, and if you succeed, you transform. I'm not exactly sure when you roll back to the non-enhanced profile. It's either at the end of your turn or at the end of that order. I don't think it matters too much either way because honestly, I don't know where these guys are going to fit into the faction. Your cheapest switcher FTO is this 18-point forward observer with an AP submachine gun, flash pulse, and EM grenades. It can fit into the Securitate Fireteam, but I'm not really sure where they're going to slot in, especially for the price. I mean, the Thunderbolt is decent. That's going to be essentially a heavy machine gun with the BS attack +1 burst as a 0 swig option. But I don't know, I think the rounder and the switcher are sort of competing for a niche here. The CC and movement is nice, but you don't want to leave behind your fire team. And if you really want a CC model in that fire team, I think you're probably going to get more out of Perseus, but again, this is a fair bit cheaper. It'll be interesting. I just, again, don't know where they're going to fit in. I could see the Thunderbolt seeing some play. I could maybe see this very cheap FTO getting some play. I think the EM grenades are quite nice. And then there's this weird non-FTO profile with Mad Traps. Mad Traps are nice, but without Mind Layer, I think it's probably a little too inefficient to be spending orders on, especially where this switcher isn't a specialist. If it was a specialist, maybe, but I don't know, I'm not sure. Alright, now we've got the Rounders. The Rounders were pretty excellent in Infinity N4, where they've still got MSV1 and Marksmanship, but they have had a bit of a glow up in the weapon options, mainly the multi-marksman rifle and boarding pistol. Before in N4 you just had a marksman rifle, a shock marksman rifle, which was fine and it got the job done, and where the Rounder was really nice in just winning gunfights and eventually putting something down. If it had enough armor, you probably wouldn't bother. But it's also worth noting marksmanship has changed a bit. So marksmanship is now affected by albedo, which has been reworked into mimetism for an MSV1 and marksmanship. So that's a bit of a downer. But marksmanship now affects nanoscreen. So it's a bit of give and take. Overall, you're probably worse off, but it's a change worth noting. This multi-marksman rifle is really nice. Complements itself with the boarding pistol. And the points look to be the same. You're never really taking the boarding shotgun anyway. The hacker is quite nice, especially if you don't have an NCO option. You can do something like a Securitate boarding shotgun repeater, then a Rounder, and then something else. What that something else is, I have no idea, because at that point, you're not getting a bonus. It's a bit of a shame that they've kept the maxes here as one with the Kulak and Rounder from N4. I was really hoping that would get bumped up to 2 just in the wake of how the edition seems to be moving. I still think Rounders are fantastic. I still think you're going to see them quite a bit. But yeah, it's a bit disappointing in availability wise. Would have been nice to be able to get 2 Rounders in the same team. Dactaris haven't changed at all. Unfortunately, not able to link them in Tunguska. The Clockmakers have had minor changes with the deployable cover and armed turret option being available. I don't think they're going to bring that much value, especially where they don't have Mind Layer and it's going to cost you in order to put them out. You have Fiddler in this faction as well, who's quite a strong linked engineer, who I believe is also still in the Namnik team, where you can kind of put remotes on top of that. You'd sometimes take a Clockmaker if you were running Hollowmen and didn't want to shill out for Fiddler, but I really don't see you taking these deployable cover and arms turret profiles where he doesn't have Mind Layer. Interventors have stayed largely the same. You've had a bit of a points drop, I think just with the Killer Hacker profile and a couple of others, I think they've gone down a point. Nothing much to be said here. They haven't changed at all except for the shotgun changes. They're still excellent. You're still going to take them in most of your lists. Alright, the Tag Treba is another one of the new models who can go in the Securitate link. The way tag comp works is it's essentially Rem Driver. You've only got one tag in this faction, being the Salamandra. So if you take a Tag Treba, it's going to give the Salamandra dodge +3, makes the gizmo kitting a bit better, and then it's a killer hacking device on top of that as well. That's pretty similar to how they functioned in the last edition, where you had the killer hacker pilot in the Salamandra in the first place. I don't really think this changes much. I mean, they're quite cheap, which is nice to put in a link, but unlike, say, one of the Corregidor pilots with a gizmo kit, they're not going to be bringing any utility to that. Next up, Mary Problems, who's had, I think, a little bit of a points decrease. She's still pretty fantastic with her modified hacking programs. Where she's a bit worse off is the changes to Pitcher. So Pitcher now loses its positive range band and has a range band identical to grenade launchers. So it zeros all the way out to 24, which makes it a bit better if you're trying to get it within, I guess, within 8. I don't know how much you'd really be wanting to do that anyway. Mary Problems was quite good in N4 when you could get her to survive that first turn. Trinity AP could put down a lot of even very heavy combined army hacker tags like the Anathematic and the Corrontid. I think that's going to continue into N5 as well. The Pitcher changes are going to hurt, but alas. Raoul Specter, nothing much has changed with him except for the Bag Bomb, which is quite strong. The Bag Bomb means if someone's shooting at Raoul and he dodges, he gets a +4 to it. With the MIM6 and a Fizz 13, that's decent. It's still not going to help you against templates, and not going to help you just dodging normally. He's also got the Super Jump Jet Propulsion rule. I've read the rules for Super Jump, and I'm a bit confused regarding Jet Propulsion. It seems now with Super Jump, you're sort of forced to jump directionally in some way, where the jet propulsion can let you return to your original spot. I'm not really sure how much that changes. The parachutist has a +1 burst boarding shotgun now. He is losing out on the templates, but the drop bears sort of cover that weakness. He was pretty excellent in N4. I think he's going to continue being excellent in N5. I'm most excited to duo Raoul Specter with a Grenzer in the Spetscorp Fireteam. That's going to get that Grenzer up to burst 2.5. And Specter complements the Grenzer perfectly, being in those range bands, having the MIM, the martial arts, and also being a specialist operative with an extra half wound. I think that's quite exciting, and I think you're going to see Raoul quite a bit if that duo takes off. Next, Miranda Ashcroft. She's gotten a little bit of a glow up as well, and she's down here in your wild cards. So she's got the CC attack -6, which she had before, and she's still got the monofilament CC weapon. The big upgrade here is marksmanship, which she didn't have in the previous edition. She's got the multi-rifle, boarding shotgun, combi rifle, and emitter +1 burst. The emitter is fairly attractive, but I think the multi-rifle is going to be what you're going to see the most. She's also got a paramine, which is a new piece of equipment, but I'm not sure really how that's going to go. She is still quite expensive. The marksmanship's nice, but she is still quite expensive. She's got the bounty hunter keyword, which isn't a keyword you're particularly wanting to buy into. You do have a Grenzer there, though, so I could see you maybe you take Miranda Ashcroft, maybe you take, I don't know, a motorized bounty hunter with a shotgun or a template and then a Grenzer. I'm not too sure. That's something to be investigated. But I could very well see Miranda just sort of still being too expensive for what she does. Next, Yelena Kovac. She hasn't changed much either. She got a lot better towards the end of N5. Towards the end of N4. But still really wasn't taken that much. And I sort of don't see that changing. Usually when you were building a Securitate Fireteam, I don't know, you take the Securitate Paramedic and maybe the boarding shotgun. I think it would have been nice if you could have built a Securitate Fireteam off of Yelena. I think that would have given her a bit more of a reason to exist. I think her having the keyword is pretty relevant though, where you can maybe put, let's say a Securitate boarding shotgun repeater, and then Yelena, and then stick a Kulak or a Grenzer on the front of that, and you've got a burst bonus. I don't know. Remains to be seen. Now we've got Fiddler, who's actually gone up a point, I think. You didn't really take the Climbing Plus Jackbot profiles that much in Tunguska, where she does have decent links existing. She's still quite good. She's still quite good. I don't think much has changed with her. Nothing else has really changed with the Authorized Bounty Hunters. Just still very cheap Swick weapons. BS-12's holding you back. Don't really know how much you're going to see them. If you were to take Miranda Ashcroft, I think I'd be drawn to the boarding shotgun heavy riot stopper profile, just to get that template weapon. The submachine gun acrylite canon's nice, but I imagine you'd be sticking a decent gun on the end of that as well. Nothing's really changed with War Cores, and then nothing's really changed with the Melrose Bounty Hunter either, although you do get that heavy riot stopper, which is nice. Limited cover is a new rule as well. It's sort of been de-nested from Impetuous. From what I understand with limited cover, you don't gain the... your opponent doesn't gain the -3 for shooting you in cover, but you do still gain the armor bonus, from what I understand. Alright, now on to the Grenzer. So we've still got the Marksmanship Multi-Sniper, which is the biggest deal from what you've got. You never really saw any of these other profiles because of how much the Multi-Sniper Marksman excelled, and I'm really happy to see that it's kept its BS-13 MSV1 Marksman. Due to the duo changes, I think you might actually see a bit of this Forward Observer Sensor NCO. It's gone down a little bit in the points. The light flamethrower is kind of more worthwhile now. And look, it's just a few bits of kit that I think are pretty reasonable. What remains to be seen, really, is if this Grenzer profile outshines Raoul Specter, who cost you an extra 6 points. I think Raoul Specter having that CC skill and that extra half wound goes quite far. But yeah, I don't know. I can see the Grenzer being quite good. You can drop those light flamethrowers through smoke as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty nice little swath. I'll have to see which one I prefer between him and Raoul Specter. Now, the Kulak Payback unit had some pretty significant changes. The biggest one is that the heavy rocket launcher is only costing you 1 Swick. The Kulak was an excellent unit in N4. It gave Tunguska a good unit to shoot through white noise with, where you could sometimes struggle with getting a decent gun behind that white noise if you weren't taking the Salamandra. It's also had a points decrease, and at 20 points and 1 Swick, I think, frankly, this guy's stellar. I think the big contention is that now you're sort of forced into taking 2 Securitate models. If you're building a Securitate, just cheap little Harris with the Kulak attached, which is what I used to do. So maybe, something like a Securitate Hacker, Securitate Repeater, and then a Kulak. You are kind of paying that cost for taking the Securitate, but man, that is a real cheap piece. The Chain of Command is no longer costing you half a Swick. I still don't think you're going to see it that much. You tend to take an Interventor LT from my experience in Tunguska. I guess it's nice if you wanted to field the Kriza Borak Lieutenant, who has had a bit of a glow up. But yeah, I've never experienced really needing that chain of command. I think it's a bit of a shame the combi rifle +1 burst pulsar lost chain of command, because when I did take it, that was my preferred profile to take it on. The combi rifle +1 burst and pulsar, it's also a pretty appealing loadout in N5, I think. But, you know, end of the day, I just don't think you're really going to see it. The other one is the killer hacker here, who's gotten a lot more interesting. I still don't know if you'll see play or not, but he's got a disco baller and a carbonite upgrade. Being 0 Swick is nice for the carbonite, but I'd say carbonite's probably the least popular program out of what's on the hacking devices. He's still quite expensive. He's still sort of awkward to fit into a fire team. I could see you taking him if they put this AVA up by 1, but that just doesn't really seem to be the case, unfortunately. The Disco Baller's nice, but as I said in my Corregidor video, I think an Eclipse Zone isn't as valued in Nomads, where they want to be shooting through their white noise and their smoke. In Tunguska, I guess you've probably got the worst smoke shooter in the Cheerkiller MSV2. Whether or not you're going to be shooting through smoke with the Grenzer now that you've lost N4 Sixth Sense, I mean, I think maybe you do it less, maybe you do it the same. I would still be doing smoke shooting with Grenzers in a Harris against a TR bot or something like that. And I do think TR bots and neurokinetic units are going to be more popular at the start of N5 at least, as people kind of scramble for a new efficient ARO where BS is kind of going down across the board and the free 10Ds days of +3 ballistics is over. Alright, next is the Zondnautica unit, which is kind of a mess, frankly. I really hate how it's set out. The big changes here is now you're getting that limited cover. They're still probably fine. It doesn't really seem like they got a points decrease. I think maybe the hacker, maybe it's even a bit more expensive, which I don't think bodes well. The hacker was the profile you'd see the most, if at all. Just being a fast specialist. Yeah, I don't know. I think the limited cover is going to hurt it quite a bit. It also hasn't really had much of a points change. You wouldn't really take the Zondnautica with nothing special. You wouldn't really take the Spitfire, especially with limited cover. So, it's still just the hacker. I don't know. Alright, then you've got Sforza, who got a bit of a rework, but I still don't think he's worth taking. Ballistics 13 is nice. Dogged's nice, but 25 points and no real keywords outside of the Bounty Hunter keyword. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't really see him doing much of anything. Alright, Hollow Men. Hollow Men got a bit cheaper, which is nice. They're still pretty excellent. The picture, of course, has gotten a bit worse, but outside of the Cyclone shooting out to really far, the Hollow Man picture is your most reliable picture. They've got super jump, not the jet propulsion, which I don't really know how that's going to affect things. They haven't changed much. They're still pretty excellent. You're going to be, if you do a pure core, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if a pure core is really going to be worth it anymore. I can see you doing a duo of Hollow Men or maybe a Harris, but yeah, I don't know. Remains to be seen. I think you have been disincentivized from taking a Hollow Man core. It is quite a bit cheaper though, and these points costs for a 2-wound ARM4 model kind of a steal, I think. It'll be interesting to play around with them. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of is steal. I think the Hollow Men are one to be watched. They've gotten worse in that the Pure Link's not as effective, but the points cost is kind of a steal. Okay, the Kreezer got a big glow up. It got about a 10-point discount, and the BS attack -3 instead of Mimetism, which is a great upgrade. I think you're going to see it a lot more now. I think 45 points is actually pretty reasonable for what you're going to get. I quite like the 360 visor as a bit of a meme pick, as kind of a midfield bully who can go on suppressive, and the BS attack -3 makes that even better. If you put a Grenzer sniper behind him to see through smoke, I think that's pretty valuable. Bit of a shame the Creaser lost Lieutenant 360 visor profile. Sorry, I should say Mach 12 profile. It was a lot of fun to play. Not particularly viable, but, you know, with a 10 points drop and BS attack -3, I could see the Creaser being worthwhile taking. And now we've got the Triggermen, who I think are the most interesting new model by a country mile. And it's largely because of the Neurocynetics multi-sniper rifle profile. Like I said before, I think the value of Neurocynetic and total reaction profiles are going to go up, where your linked ARO models are going down a bit in power level due to the link team changes. The Mim -3 in regen's nice. It's a 2 wound model with decent armor. The 360 visor is nice. We've seen some more deployment zone parachutists. But yeah, the sniper rifle is really nice. The multi-pistol is nice if they get up close, and the Emerat. It's a pretty nice ablative piece. 43 points is a worry, though. It's quite a bit of a worry. And they don't link with anything regarding any of the other profiles. The multi-rifle profile, I think, is probably just too expensive for what you're going to get. The active turn multi-sniper rifle is interesting. The BS attack +1 burst natively is nice. I don't know. I mean, you are competing with the Kreisa Borak pretty directly. 45 points and 1.5 Swick, 44 points, 1.5 Swick. You've got the benefit of outranging people. You've got the benefit of the multi-ammo being quite a bit stronger than the heavy machine gun ammo. But, yeah, I don't know. You still got Mim. The regen's nice. I think it'll be interesting to see who wins the war for being taken out of the Triggerman or the Kreisa. The Kreisa has some link options. Nothing that's really going to give it a bonus unless you do the Hollow Man fun time. But I could see you taking Perseus, a Hollow Man of some sort in a Kreisa, but that's really quite expensive. And I think, you know, in N4 you saw the +1 burst on the Kreisa's gun not really being worth it anyway, where you do start to plateau quite a bit in terms of what an extra burst, and in this case an extra half burst, brings to the table. So I'm pretty interested. You know, at least you can slap a specialist to the Kreisa. You can't really do that with the Triggerman. I think the Neurosynetics profile is something to watch, as is the active turn multi-sniper. I don't think either of the multi-rifle or K1 combi are really going to see any play. You're just starting a bit too far back the table to really make some noise. I'd be worried about getting run down by close combat models. You've got an Emerat, but if you drop that when they stab you in the head, I don't know, you're still probably not in a good way. 2 wounds. Yeah, just a bit expensive, I think. Alright, then we got the Sally, who's frankly looking pretty ridiculous with the addition of NCO at no real cost. The Salamander was considered probably Nomad's best tag next to the Gator with the HRMC. The Swick cost was a bit of a, I don't know, you know, it's higher than your average tag, but you really didn't care because of the damage it put out. It getting a +3 dodge if you take the tag driver is really good. Dodging on a 14 is fantastic. I was generally of the opinion that it's not worth running a tag in a Sectorial if you're playing Nomads, and you should probably just go and play vanilla. I was especially of that opinion in Corregidor. But yeah, I don't know. It's a low cost. It's got an NCO. I mean, we know the Salamander is fantastic. It's gotten even more fantastic. What can you say? Yeesh. Now the Anaconda. I have no idea why this is here, to be honest. It's like, frankly, I think it's terrible. For this price, like, look, this heavy machine gun, light shotgun, Panzerfaust, I'd much rather just take the Kriza Borak, I think. The AP Spitfire, I don't know, like, this is interesting, but it just feels like weapon soup where you're never really going to get the maximum value out of anything here. You're only BS13, you don't have any mods to that, like the Triggerman or the Kriza. I mean, look, it's significantly cheaper than the Sally, but it's also significantly more expensive than the Kriza and the Triggerman. It has a Fireteam option, but look, so does the Kriza. I don't really know why this is here. I don't think it's going to see any play. Pretty bleh model, I think. So the Stempler Zond, it got a tactical awareness profile, kind of mirroring the old ITS rules. It's a shame it didn't get added to the Stempler Zond FTO as an additional option. That would have been quite strong. I mean, look, they've had a little bit of a points change. They're still quite good. You'll still take them in the dynamic team. There's quite a lot you could do with this team. I think it's actually fairly exciting. But yeah, it's good. Now, the Reaction Zond. Everyone's TR bot's got a new option with the Thunderbolt +1 burst. It's 5 points cheaper than the heavy machine gun and cost 0 SWIC. And I think it's really attractive, especially in Nomads where you can have a bit more SWIC pressure than other factions. I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Thunderbolt quite a bit. Synergizes quite well if you're taking a Evo Hacker. You didn't tend to take an Evo Hacker a whole lot of the time in Tunguska. That was more of a Corregidor thing, but it was really great for buffing things like puppet bots, which were pretty brutal with the marksmanship. It is worth noting marksmanship has gotten a little bit worse, as I stated before with the albedo change, but I could see some really interesting Tunguska lists where you're bringing the Thunderbolt Reaction Zond with an Evo Hacker. Okay, the Vertigo Zond. So we'll talk a bit about Guided. Guided has gotten worse in N5 as an active turn strategy. Spotlight is now burst 2 and inflict saves, which I believe are damage 15 DA. It's a pretty intense save. But what it means is that your ARO spotlights are a bit worse, and your active spotlights are a bit better. This is sort of awkward, where the reset now face-to-faces the missile, but I think the big difference is that your pitchers are so much less efficient. You've lost that +3 range band, and the way that the special die works with the burst bonus and fire teams, you're never shooting those two pitchers at once. I think the fast pandas with the hecklers are going to become your main way to deliver those repeaters. A lot of people play Tunguska like that anyway, including myself. So, yeah, I mean, look, if you want to active turn missile launch, I think Tunguska might be the best sectorial to do it in, where Bakunin and Corregidor don't have access to fast pandas. But your active turn missiling's gotten a little worse. I think Tunguska was the faction you were active turn missiling with the least anyway, where you had, other strong stuff to do when you're active. I sort of viewed active turn guided play as kind of a patch for some of the weaknesses of Corregidor and of Bakunin, where they can sometimes lack a punch at long range. Alright, the Meteor Zond is still here and still fantastic. It's gained super jump as well. I'm also a huge fan of this EM carbine, where you used to have a combi rifle. I think that's a pretty cool thing to add on to it. I usually took the boarding shotgun profile anyway, just because it was cheaper. Might be worth screwing around with the light shotgun EM carbine. The Meteor Zond's a fantastic piece. It's just a real game winner at 19 points. Sweep in at the end of a mission and just flip things on your opponent's head. Alright, so the Cyclone's changed a little bit and it got a bit of a points drop. It's kept its old loadouts. I think the Cyclone is a lot less interesting to talk about in Tunguska. It's probably got, next to the Hollow Man, the most reliable pitcher, just to shoot deployment zone to deployment zone. I don't think you're really going to see it in Tunguska. I think you got better things to do. You've got the Interventor Killer Hacker who can Cybermask and go up with a Fast Panda. And you've also got the Heckler who can get a fast panda there as well. What they've done with the Lunicod is interesting. I don't think the Lunicod's good, and I'll say that out the gate, but giving it the forward deployment is a push in the right direction. The issue was it had some great defensive tech, but it was stuck in your deployment zone in N4. That's not the case in N5. You've got that mine-laid crazy koala there. You've got the repeater and you've got the heavy shotgun and flamethrower if something comes around the corner on you. But at the end of the day, it's pretty expensive for a corner guard. The movement buff's pretty insane. Movement 8-2 is fantastic, but only being 1 wound and having not great armor, I don't really know how that's going to pan out. The Thunderbolt profile is pretty interesting. Just from, I guess, that perspective of the Evo hacker. But again, I don't know. I just don't see this profile, this unit being taken, which is unfortunate. I think it's still too expensive for what it brings to the table, especially where everything around it has kind of gone down in points. Soliots haven't really changed, neither are Zonbots, but the Vostok has had a change. The Vostok now has an FTO profile, which means the Vostok repeater +1 damage Mach 12, which was, I guess you could say, the old Vostok, isn't linkable anymore. One that is linkable doesn't have a repeater on board and has a slight nerf to the Mach 12 damage, but at 5 points cheaper, that's honestly pretty attractive. You weren't really as, I don't know, I feel like Corregidor was kind of more desperate to have that repeater on board, and hence in Corregidor, they're actually able to take the Vostok non-FTO profile in a Fireteam, which is really nice. Look, I don't think the Vostok has changed incredibly. You didn't really see it too much in Tunguska. I don't think that's going to change, especially where burst bonuses have gotten a little funkier. You know, maybe in the Naomic Fireteam is probably where you're going to see it the most. But yeah, things have changed with the Vostok. I don't think you saw them in Tunguska that much anyway. Yeah. Alright, so next is the Heckler. So the Heckler's stayed pretty much the same. Its points haven't really shifted. You're still mostly here for the combi rifle, jammer, fast panda. And yeah, that's about it. Nothing much more to say in the Heckler. Alright, Specters. They've changed a little bit, mostly in their points cost, but I still don't think they're cheap enough to take them. I have no idea what's going on with this Mind Layer 1 Swick profile. I guess you could bluff it as a Heckler, but no one's getting close to your Heckler anyway for fear of the jamming. The multi-sniper is there, I think, I don't know, I think you've probably got the strongest ARO presence in Nomads with the Grenzer multi-sniper. I don't really know if you need to be spending that many points in Swick. Yeah, unfortunately I think the Spectre is still a model you're not going to see that much. Alright, so now we move to the Zellenkriegers, where we've got a pretty noticeable change in the Berserk rule. Berserk's now face-to-face, which is a bit of a nerf for the Zellenkrieger, who really likes to run in with the +1 heavy pistol and deal some damage. But yeah, I mean, look, they're still favored against enemy models who don't have any CC specialization, especially with the new wraparound rules with martial arts, where he's no longer critting on a 17 to 20. He's critting on a 20, a 1, a 2, and a 3 as well. So that's quite nice. The no cover rule is just a denesting from Impetuous, as we said before. What's really noticeable is the absence of the extreme Zellenkrieger. It brings your sources of smoke down to only 3. Well, yeah, I'm not really counting the Zondnautica as a reliable way to put down smoke. I honestly don't think it matters too much for you. You just shell out the extra points for Demna, who's excellent anyway. So, you know, we might skip to Denma. And yeah, look, nothing's really changed with Denma either. He's pretty much identical to his N4 profile. You can see that with the Zellenkrieger as well. They're pretty much identical. The Metacam charts haven't changed or anything like that. Natural Born Warriors changed a bit to be a bit worse, but Oh well, neither here nor there. Zellenkriegers are a bit worse in some ways, a bit better in some ways. You're still probably going to take 2 in most of your Tunguska lists anyway. Who cares? Alright, now I've got Perseus. BS attack +1 burst is a really nice change. The frenzy has sort of stayed the same. So I'm glad that he's not. The way things have been de-nested now, even if he does frenzy, I don't believe he's going to gain no cover or anything like that, but that'll have to be double checked. If he stayed the same as he has in previous editions, in N4, I think he's still pretty fantastic. He's still got a template weapon, smoke grenades, and a good gun. He's a great shot. Smoke grenades having +1 burst as well. That's not something you're going to see too much in N5 either. In N4, when you had linked smoke grenades, you could throw 2 smoke grenades out. Not the case in N5. So smoke gets a little bit worse overall, but with BS attack +1 burst, you're getting those 2 smoke grenades down, making it really quite reliable. Another thing that was nice you could do with 2 smoke grenades is put one next to you and then kind of one further up to get that efficiency. And yeah, look, I think Perseus is quite good. Him having the Securitate tag is pretty relevant. He looks pretty excellent. You know, he's going to cost you the points, but everything's sort of gone down around him, so you might have more room for that. Alright, Wulfgang Amadeus Wolf. Pretty nice glow up. The BS attack continuous damage is a pretty big deal with the multi-rifle +1 burst. And other than that, he hasn't changed too much. The Berserk +3 is still pretty nice. He's got immunity arm, which he also didn't have. So he's essentially gained immunity arm, he's gained BS attack continuous damage, and he's stayed at a similar points cost. I think he's good, and I think he's better than he was in N4. I just still don't know if he has a home, really. Yeah, I don't know, perhaps in some kind of team with a Hollow Man or a Kriza Borak and then a Stempler Zond. I think he had a much better home in Corregidor, I think. And it's strange that he's been pulled out of there and buffed in the other sectorials. I think he's quite good. I'm just not sure where his home is. Then lastly, we've got the Go Pod, who is the vehicle. So they've got the aerial trait, which means they can't be targeted in CC. And they've also got no cover, but they've got BS attack -3 and MIM -3. They've got some pretty good loadouts here. The heavy rocket launcher +1 damage is quite nice. And they've got the Go Bot with the little flash pulse and chain call. So look, I think they're quite good at putting out a fork. They're decently expensive, but not too expensive. I think it'll be pretty interesting to see how they pan out. I think you will see it on the table. I'm not sure how it'll age long term, though. Alright, so how is Corregidor coming out into N5? I think they're coming out decently well. I think the Securitate Fireteam max AVAs are going to hold them back a bit. And the hacking spotlight game has gotten a little bit worse, but I don't think it's going to affect Tunguska as much as it's going to affect Bakunin or Corregidor, who are really more focused on that reactive hacking game, where Tunguska's focused more on that active hacking game. I think Tunguska, could be in contention for best Nomad Sectorial now. I think we'll talk a bit more about it in the Bakunin episode, but I think Bakunin is going to be hurt pretty bad by their link team changes. I think a lot of stuff in Tunguska has either stayed the same or gotten better. The one thing that's gotten a bit worse, of course, is the changes to the links regarding Sixth Sense, but that's something every sectorial is going to experience. So I think Tunguska's coming out of the gates pretty strong. It's got some quite strong duos. It's got great individual elements, and the hacking and guided nerfs haven't hit it as hard as perhaps Bakunin or Corregidor. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I've also put a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description for Rob Cantrell, since I've ripped off his entire channel. Bye-bye now.